Good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending our webinar today. My name is Tej Ravindra and I work on product here at Apigee. The key goal of this webinar is actually to get you thinking about what are your backend data and or backend services worth. What are they worth in terms of sheer dollar opportunity? What are they worth in terms of the partners that you work with and the deeper partner relationships that you can build? And how your backend data and services can help you develop your third-party developer ecosystem in a more robust fashion. So the agenda for today's webinar and what we will be covering is as follows. Thinking of your APIs as a strategic revenue opportunity. The big idea here is how can you use or repurpose your existing backend data or services. And I will walk you through examples of people who are doing it well today. Strengthen and manage your partnerships. The big idea here is partners can consume your data or services via a self-service portal. And how can they upgrade from one plan to another? How can they engage with you? How can they figure out how they're doing in terms of their usage and so on. Build and energize your developer ecosystem with creative pricing models. And 4, how can Apogee help you achieve these goals? So businesses have a plethora of backend data and services which you can think of as assets. These assets, when exposed to the appropriate audience, can become a strategic revenue opportunity. These assets can be exposed via your APIs to your partners and third-party developer ecosystem. I'll walk you through some examples here of popular APIs and categories. In 2014, these were some of the most popular APIs. How is popularity measured here? By the strength of the developer ecosystem that's associated with those APIs, as in how many applications are using these APIs, how many applications are completed, number of end users for these applications. So Google Maps is one of the top APIs being used for developing third-party applications, apps, mashups, etc., with the rich data that they provide. So Google actually allows free access to their maps information up to a certain volume. Above and beyond that volume, the developers are charged for calls that are made to the Google Maps API. So that's one example of how a company has taken the rich data that they have and really developed a large number of applications around their data, not necessarily by themselves, but by enabling third parties to do so. Another popular and well-known API is Facebook. Its authentication API is being used by millions of applications for authentication purposes. The revenue-generating side of this is their advertising API, where companies are using Facebook's advertising API to push their products and services onto Facebook's existing platform and to the large audience that Facebook brings. Travel is a category that is ripe with revenue opportunities via the API channel. Aggregators such as Kayak pay a commission for every travel reservation that is made through their site or search. So Kayak is a really interesting company because on both sides, it's working with the affiliate model, right? So on one side, it's aggregating data and data from companies like Expedia, Travelocity, maybe even directly from the airlines, and it's actually paying those companies for access to this data. And on the other side, it's making its own API available to developers for building third-party applications and charging or creating revenue share opportunities so that any reservations that are made through Kayak, Kayak gets a cut, so does the third-party developer. In terms of sheer affiliate models, Amazon is an example that comes to mind. So Amazon actually will allow other companies, let's say like a carrier, to potentially show links to their products and upsells and charge a commission for any business that comes through that. And on the reverse side of that, Amazon pays out commissions to third-party sites that actually show Amazon products. More recently, logistical services have entered the API services arena. So FedEx API is actually being used a lot as well. So APIs reflects the range of capabilities that your business can offer. And so here, these examples that we covered showed kind of many different facets of what a business can offer, whether it's data or service. So broadly, you can think of it as content providers or digital properties that can expose their data, service providers that can expose their services, affiliates that actually pay out revenue share opportunities, and last but not the least, payment APIs. So let's talk about the content provider or digital properties. Here, it's a very simple data share opportunity where you as a company have gathered a lot of rich data, and you can enable people to use that data and build out different innovative applications, surface that data in relevant scenarios. And here you can think of it as exposing your data via the API and charging for access to your data. So you might end up charging by what kind of data it is. So if you have very difficult to obtain geolocation sort of data, you can bundle that data up through one API and charge your partners n amount of dollars to just access that API. You don't have to track the number of calls they're making, but just you can say, access to this API costs X amount of dollars, and you're done. Another way of thinking of it is you can charge by volume, right? So let's say you have weather-related data, right? So every day you're getting different volume of calls, and based on how many people are checking the weather through your third-party applications, and so you're charging by volume. Digital services. So there are companies that actually have built out entire business models around services such as location intelligence, address verification, or if you think of an interesting example here is something called a DUNS number, which is almost like if you think of a credit score for an individual and all the information that comes about the individuals when you make a call on their credit score, the equivalent for a business is something called a DUNS number, where this particular company, which I'm using as an example, Dun & Bradstreet, has built a business model around collecting rich information about various businesses, and has a unique identifier called as a DUNS number that is associated with each business, and therefore it's used. Its services are used in examples such as e-commerce, right? So where e-commerce company will make a call, a back-end call, using something called a DUNS number to get information about the company that's selling on their website, for example. Like if you think of like Alibaba or eBay, they are making calls and like ensuring that the seller company is actually a valid registered company. So this is a very, very viable business model. People like companies like Dun & Bradstreet actually have several thousands of partners all around the world that they've been working with. The old model was where there'd be paper and pen partnerships. They'd sign agreements, and there'd be a big FTP upload where they share all these DUNS numbers, for example, every month, let's say, and they would receive revenue for that. But this was not very suitable for the new economy, where there are lots of mobile applications that are hitting the back end of these systems, and these systems are just too slow to respond. So what we need is like a real-time, scalable application that can support these kind of services, instead of a one-off, here you go, here's a big file that you can download and use whenever you need it. So I'll get more into the details of this later on in the presentation. Next is the revenue share model that I mentioned. So a lot of big retailers actually pay out on a commission basis based on the amount of traffic and consequently the transactions, the successful transactions that are generated by third-party developers and applications. So based on different categories, different revenue percentages are given out. So here's an example of Walgreens, who actually has an old-fashioned retail business, but has really changed the paradigm in terms of the way they enable digital business. So they actually have a photo printing and photo ordering API that they expose that developers have built out a lot of apps off of. So when the end users go and place orders for photo prints, let's say it's like 20 cents per photograph, right? And the volumes are really high here. So for every order that's placed, the developer gets anywhere between 5% to 10% commission. And for Walgreens, what this means is they are driving foot traffic to their stores. So just think about what they've done in terms of not only creating a revenue opportunity with their existing services, but also strategically drive more traffic to their stores, right? So I'll just take a pause there because there's a totally different kind of a business that's entering this revenue share model, and that is telecom. So telecom companies are getting disrupted every day. So they're thinking of new business models and how they can stay relevant. One company that comes to mind is Swisscom, that's actually embracing the change in the telecom business model, where they're now going to start offering carrier billing as well as messaging, all these as APIs for third parties and partners to go and build off of. So an example of a third-party application that uses carrier services for authentication, for messaging and so on is WhatsApp. Today, a company like WhatsApp is not paying carriers anything. But a few years down the line, that could change. Because what is enabling a lot of these, we call them over-the-top, OTT applications to survive today and thrive, are these infrastructure that are put into place by telecoms. So how can some of these older businesses stay relevant? By embracing the opportunity to expose their existing services through APIs. This everybody should be very familiar with, which is payment processing API. You've seen it. You've seen it everywhere. You've seen it on websites. You've seen it in applications. Basically, very straightforward model here. For every payment that passes through these payment gateways charge usually like a 2.9% fee. And in certain cases, they charge, if the transaction value is not big enough, they charge a straight out 10 cents per transaction kind of a model. So here, again, they equip developers and their partners to just provide payment services without putting in too much effort themselves. They can just plug this in and play. Broadly, right, if you think of all the different examples we went through, right, either the API provider pays the developer or the developer pays the API provider, right? So when the API provider pays the developer, you have a revenue share kind of a model, okay? And under revenue share, you can have a fixed percentage that you agree on, and for every transaction that happens, you pay that fixed percentage revenue share. Or you can have a flexible model where you say, I'll pay you 5% for every transaction that happens, and above and beyond a certain volume, I'll pay you 10%. So you're incentivizing more volume, right? And hybrid, as the name indicates, is a mix of those two, right? And where the developer pays the API provider, there could be two kinds. There's the fee-based model and the freemium model. I'll talk about the freemium model first. Because in the freemium model, you're actually exposing your API for free so that people get a chance to go and try out the API and the end users gain the value out of the API, and you kind of are establishing the case for try it out. If you like it, pay us, right? And this is kind of the model that Google Maps has, for example, right? So up to a certain volume, it's free, and then you move to a premium package where you pay. And you can have you can base that on, hey, I'll give it to you free for a month, which is duration based. You can make it quantity based, or you can make it hybrid, as the name indicates. In fee-based models, you can have a one-time fee, and this example would be when you're working with a partner, right? So let's say you are a company that has a lot of educational content, textbooks, lots of great digital content, right? You might have a long-time partner that you do business with, maybe like Amazon, and you might do like a one-time, like every year you negotiate once, and you say you get this much content for this much money, and it's a one-time deal. And then next year you come back and renegotiate, right? You could have a subscription model. This everyone should be familiar with, where you pay a certain fee every month, and you have access to a certain amount of content. And you can have a transaction-based model. And this transaction-based model is very common with mobile apps, okay? So I just spoke about a lot of different kinds of revenue opportunities that you can think of for your data and for your services. But ultimately, what makes an API program successful, right? Because API is just a way of connecting or exposing what capabilities you have. But it's only successful if people are deriving value out of it. So you have to think of the category in which you're operating, right? Are you a travel company? Are you in social media? Because there are certain categories that lend themselves naturally to this kind of a model, and certain categories that don't. So it makes a lot of sense in social media, in content, music, streaming video, logistical services. I mean, you can be very, very creative in terms of what your category has to offer, right? The next thing is a clear value proposition. What do you get as a partner or a developer for working with me? So that's really, really important to make clear. And that could be monetary benefit, that could be business opportunity, that could be viral marketing, anything. So if you think of like Twitter, right? Why would somebody integrate Twitter API into their app? Because suddenly they've created an audience that is 10 times larger than what they would have had access to otherwise. Little to no friction to try and get started. So at Apogee, we refer to this as time to hello world, right? So when a developer comes to your portal and tries to access your APIs, how easy is it for them to get something right away, right? They put in a request, they need to see a response right away. And last but not the least, an engaged partner or developer community makes all the difference. So that's where you get the most return on investment that you make, right? Because you have your developer community out there talking up the services that you provide. So at Apogee, we kind of think of this as the digital value chain, the end-to-end of your digital value chain. And there's different players in this digital value chain. The API team is like an internal partner team that's working with distributors and resellers of an enterprise. They manage which product, in this case API products, will be available to partners based on which type of financial model. So they really are key in deciding what backend services or data are going to become available for outside consumption. Their job is also to sign on and enable partners and developers to keep them engaged and periodically do financial analysis of the relationship. The API team has to understand the partner's business well and also understand what products they may need. The next key player here is the developer. So the developers are basically your distributors and resellers. So this is all an analogy to your existing physical world value chain, right? So the developers build your storefronts and your digital presence in the form of your apps. The app developer represents a new channel that enables expanding reach and revenue. The better the developer's product, the app, the more likely is the success of your engagement with your end users. Monetization of your digital assets is therefore key to deriving value through your internal and external developer and partner channels. So developers don't have to always be from outside organizations. The way to think about it is you can actually have internal use cases for this as well. So if you're a big organization with just one centralized IT team that is overburdened, and there are all these different departments that want to build out new applications and exciting innovations, one way you can enable them is you create the API to access your backend, and all these developers now can internal to your organization access. So this is what we call as the internal monetization use case, where you can track your internal usage. And then I already talked about the B2B and the B2C scenarios. So this is kind of a outline of how the ecosystem would look, right? You, the API provider, are at the start of the ecosystem. Your outward-facing developer portal exposes your backend data and services to your partners, and your partners might have many developers, or it might be an individual developer. So all this is very interesting and very exciting in terms of the opportunity. But how do you get from where you are today to where you want to be? What are some of the challenges that you might face, right? So in introducing new business models, typically the way it goes is, marketing has these ideas of the business model and has to work with IT to set up these new SKUs or these new products. And that's not a trivial task because, you have to change your back-end IT systems to support these new products and new business models. Typically, I'll give you the example of a telecom provider, right? This kind of a change can cost upwards of $20 million. And once you make that kind of a change and you want to roll it out to all your partners, it's a one at a time, long drawn process. So there's a lot of investment that goes in, and suddenly you're investing all this money and you're not even sure it's going to work, this new business model. So what you need is something where you can experiment, you can try out these things really, really fast without having to depend on your already overburdened IT. The second thing that's important is ongoing measurement, right? Because if you cannot measure the success of what you recently launched, then you don't know. You don't know if you should continue investing in it. And thirdly, transparency. So the way to build a trusted relationship with your partner is you want to share with them information on what's working in terms of the APIs that they're using. So how do you do all this? Well, there wasn't a clear-cut answer, and so at Apigee, the way we've thought about it is how can we enable you to try out all these different models really, really, really fast, measure it really fast, share it with your partners in a self-service mechanism. And that's where we built out Apigee's monetization capabilities, which are available through our existing platform. We actually have built out capabilities around the end-to-end of your value chain, right? So on the API provider side, you should be able to create and publish what we call as packages, where you bundle your backend API products and you create these packages that you can expose to your partners. You can create different pricing models around them. So I remember all the pricing models I showed you. So you can go absolutely crazy with what you want to try out for all the different API products that you want to expose, and you can target them to different partners. So when you're creating this kind of an ecosystem, you want to be able to communicate with your partners and developers. And the way to do that is notifications. So what we have is a very robust system around limits and notifications, where you can set up intelligence around kind of usage limits where you can track, okay, for this partner, I want to allow this sort of a volume, and when they're hitting this volume, please send me a notification, maybe send the partner a notification as well, because maybe they're moving from one kind of a rate plan to another rate plan. Rate plan is essentially our language for the pricing model that they've chosen, right? And of course, you need your billing system to be very robust, because you're tracking usage, and you want to inform your partners about their usage and what kind of costs they're incurring while using your API. There's very, very detailed reporting that's available. And last but not the least, we have very robust developer workflows where basically through a portal, your partners and developers can go and sign up to access these APIs. They will get a unique identifier called as the app key that they can use to go and start building apps right away, try out your APIs, gain value, and they can come back and track their how their app is doing, what kind of revenues that they're generating, and so on. So that's where our developer analytics comes in. So we'll jump to a demo shortly, but here are some screenshots from the product of how you would go and create these APIs. So here, this is actually an actual grouping of different APIs that are grouped under packages. So as I mentioned to you, you can go really, really deep into the kind of revenue model you want to set up or the pricing model you want to set up. In this example, it's a fee model, and the period is over 12 months. So you basically go and you create your package, you set the pricing, and then you publish. And when you hit publish, it gets published to a developer-facing portal where developers can access it. So as I mentioned, your partners will go and buy access to your APIs. So this is where they would go and add a balance. So if you're using a paradigm where you're charging by number of calls, if they've added, N amount of dollars into their balance, and your charging model basically says it's 1 cent per transaction, as their app starts making these back-end calls, we deduct the balance. And of course, we'll notify when their balance is low and so on. So that's kind of an overview of how you can think about your APIs, how you can think of your back-end data as revenue opportunities, how you can kind of think of your end-to-end ecosystem, and finally, how you can enable people to access your APIs. So with that, I will jump to the demo, but if there are any questions, I'd like to take a pause. There is one question. Do you find most of the revenue sharing or commission models paying a developer pay on a % of sales? Anything paid for new customers, i.e. a fixed dollar bounty to send someone to their site? Example, bring me a new customer and they shop on my site. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I think in e-commerce, that's a very, very popular model where just for driving traffic, you get paid a certain amount of agreed upon dollars. Yeah, so the answer is yes. We definitely see that more on the e-commerce, more on the retail side. But the ability to track who is sending that is again driven by that unique key that I referred to earlier. So yes, it's absolutely possible. Another question that's come in is, how can governments generate revenue from APIs? That's a really interesting question. I think if you think about the kind of data or services that governments provide, there are definitely a lot of opportunities there, because governments do have some unique opportunities for services, right? So the example that comes to mind is maybe like a toll that they're collecting, right? They're already charging for it, right? And the way they're charging is maybe very old, right? Like maybe you have to go through a toll gate, pay cash or something. So instead, if there was an innovative way of doing that, that's one example that comes to mind. But I'm open to other examples if anyone has better ideas. But yeah, for sure. I think wherever governments are already charging, they can think of disrupting their own charging models. Or where governments maybe want some sort of a viral effect. Like if you think about the Obama healthcare initiative, how could we drive more traffic for more people to sign up? There might be something there. Another question is, what recommendations do you have for getting traction and building a developer community? Great question. So just as it is for building any other sort of community or having engagement with your audience, you have to be talking about what's relevant to that audience. So really understanding what your developers care about, right? So whether it's a very clear value proposition in terms of a clear monetary benefit in building out apps. So Apple is a good example of someone who's created an ecosystem where developers are flocking to build these apps because it's a very clear value proposition for developers, right? They get to build all these apps that millions of people will use. Okay, there's pride in that, and there's also the monetary benefit in that, right? The second thing is making it very, very easy to figure out what you're giving them, right? So in the most literal form, that is, hey, here is the request I'm going to make to your backend API. What is the response I'm going to get? That should be very, very clear and not buried deep under some documentation. And actually, like Apigee has a lot of tools that allow you to do that. Recently, we've introduced Swagger-based API design, where you can actually, the end user, the third-party developer or the app developer and the API provider can work together on the design of the API. Instead of like old-fashioned waterfall model, the API design evolves as the app is getting built. So that's like the extreme end of how to engage the developer. So just to go over that again, A, have a very clear value proposition. B, make it very, very easy for usage. Don't bury things deep into your documentation. And C, I mean, just kind of stay engaged, stay tuned to what your audience is thinking about. Jump into the community, jump into the forum, answer questions, listen to what people are saying, and build out your APIs based on what people are asking for. Will a recording of this be shared? Yes. Where will it be shared? By email. Okay, so there are no other questions at the moment, so I'm going to go ahead and jump into a demo of the product. So what we're looking at here is the Apogee dashboard for a API provider. So this is the demo, but this is how it would look if your APIs were deployed via Apogee's gateway. So what you're looking at is all the traffic that's coming through your gateway, all the different developer apps, and the traffic that's coming via each developer app. And you can also check out other details on developer engagement. So there's a lot of great reporting that we do. And so you can actually track which of your API products are getting the most traffic, who are your most engaged developers, what kind of revenue they're generating, and so on. But what I wanted to actually focus on for this demo is monetization itself. So you would actually, if you were using Apogee's Edge product, which allows you to set up different proxies and expose your backend services via these proxies as products, you would actually come here to get started with your monetization, right? So you'd come here, the assumption here is that you've already designed your different products. So here, the example I'm going to use is a product called Affiliates General. So this is the example of a retailer whose proxy that I'm pointing to is actually the orders proxy. So any orders that are placed via that particular backend service, right? And you've set a quota of 1,000 requests every minute. And the reason you might set this quota is because that's pretty much what your backend can handle, and you don't want to bring everything crashing down. Now you're going to go and create a package. So I'd actually already done that. So what I did was I added a couple of different kinds of packages. So in one package, and I'll pull this up. I had a fixed fee of $99 over a 12-month period, for which you get to basically access this particular product called Affiliates General. Oh, thank you. You get to access Affiliates General through that package. So what I'll do is I'll actually add a new rate plan just to kind of walk you through how we can do some of the things we talked about earlier. So I can actually point these rate plans or these pricing models to different target segments. So let's say I pick one of my partners in Singapore and I want to set up a rev share model with them. So I say that I'm pointing it to the Singapore partner, and I want the same pricing model for all my products. I can do a setup fee of $100. Because here, by doing a revenue share, I'm taking a risk, right? I won't get paid unless they make money. So I'll at least cover my costs by having a setup fee. And I can say the period over which I charge this. And if I want to do freemium, I can do that as well. So I can say, okay, maybe I'm now going to go set up my revenue share, and I'm going to say it's a fixed. Maybe I'll do a 5%, or you know what? Maybe let's make it more interesting. Let's make it flexible, and let's say that so up to 10,000, I'm going to pay out a particular percentage. And then 10,000 to 25,000, I'm going to pay out a different percentage. And then finally, 25,000 to 100,000, is a different percentage. So up to 10,000, I'll pay 2%. 10,000 to 25,000, 5%, and then I'll pay 8%. And greater than 100,000, I'll pay 10%. So this is a very typical affiliate model where you're incentivizing larger dollar amounts. Makes sense, right? They make more money if you make more money. So here we have the save draft or save and publish. What save draft allows you to do is, as an API provider, maybe you have business owners or different stakeholders that need to review your pricing plan. And so you don't want to publish it right away, because when you hit publish, you essentially go and this whole pricing plan gets published to your partner portal. So you might want to review it internally, and then you might say, okay, well, now we agree, and then you go and publish. So I won't be able to show you the portal today, but essentially this automatically publishes onto the portal, and your partners have a self-service mechanism where they can go and accept terms and conditions, and then they can accept any rate plan that they're interested in. Why is that helpful? Because today what happens is long, never-ending negotiated deals. Your sales team, a very high-touch model, calling and following up, and then finally agreeing. And there's like a lot of logistical issues around that. Whereas the self-service model, you can see if your partner has accepted or not. And even for them, it's really easy. There's no dependency on you. Once you publish, they get a notification, and so you can really iterate a lot in terms of both your pricing as well as your products that you offer. So this is kind of the rate plan piece of it. There's also very detailed reporting. I'm not going to get into too many details on that, but you can have billing, you can go check your revenue, you can look at how much your prepaid balances are for each of your developers. Actually, that's kind of an indicator for how much engagement there is as well. Because if nobody is really adding much balance and trying things out, they're not really engaged. So you can reach out to your community and see what's going on. You can do refunds, you can make adjustments and credits. So let's say you're running some sort of a promotion, you can go and make a credit to a partner and they can try something out. So we have a lot of robust functionality around being able to achieve exposing your backend services and data, B, pricing creatively, C, measuring the success of your initiatives, and D, engaging your developer community. Because what I could not show you today, and maybe we can make a separate session out of it, is the developer portal side of it. We have a lot of robust features around forums, community, adding apps and trying out right away. So that's kind of the end-to-end ecosystem and how we can help you get there. If there are any existing customers of Apigee's on this call, then I'd like to offer, if you are interested in monetization capabilities, one thing I'd like to offer is reach out to me directly, travindra@apigee.com, and I can offer you a trial of the feature for a few months for free. And if you're not an existing Apogee customer but you're just still interested in talking, please do reach out.